The call to Friday prayers at the East London Mosque, which has strong links with the Muslim Council of Britain, one of the more vocal groups amongst British Muslims.
Despite the fact that it frequently happens, it's neither helpful nor accurate to describe the British Muslim community. There are so many sects, traditions, cultures, nationalities even, that it's more accurate to describe the British Muslim communities. But there is one question that's increasingly being put to all of them. Are they doing enough internally to address some challenging issues that stem from being a Muslim in Britain?
Are Britain's nearly 3 million Muslims willing to confront radicalisation, attitudes to non-Muslims, to women and to cases of sexual exploitation in a meaningful way? A number of them say no, not nearly enough.
I think one thing we've got in common is we're all British.
Former jihadi Hanif Kadir has spent 10 years telling young Muslim teenagers how they can reject extremist radicalisation, using outward-bound courses and community work. But he and others doing this work think some elders and imams are failing their youngsters.
They never believed that there were certain issues within the community. They've always had their heads buried under the sand, sadly. It's been going on for decades. That one thing is said in public to please the UK PLC or the government, but in private something very different has been said, and the message has been confused. But some of them don't get the message confused. Some of the young people, it pushes them further into a space where they are very vulnerable for radical recruiters.
For thousands of youngsters, life is not about jihad, but just trying to live one's faith within an increasingly secular society. A struggle not helped, say some scholars, if rigid interpretations of the Quran are being preached.
Certainly cultural practices, which are really Arab or South Asian in origin, often don't make sense in 21st century Britain. And you're not being religious if you stick to those. You're perhaps creating obstacles. And it's better to let go of some of those cultural problems, especially when they lead to clear injustices such as forced marriage, honour-based violence, a reticence to talk about grooming, for example, or about discrimination against women, etc., etc. There's a long list. But I'm very clear that, in fact, the bad Muslim is the one who sticks to unflinching, narrow, dogmatic, literalist, fundamentalist assumptions of religion.
One issue often focused on as interpretation is the wearing of the niqab. The government's indicated it's against banning the veil, but polling suggests 80% of Britons favour a ban in public places. Many Muslim women want the choice, but some want that choice to be informed.
I think there are more women in this country that are making the decision to wear it, but I think what's sad is that many of them don't seem to recognise the legacy of what the niqab stood for. A lot of those preachers who do advocate the wearing of the niqab, they also preach that Muslim women should be removed from the public sphere. They preach that women should be sidelined and should be confined to the private sphere. They argue that women are sexual objects that should be covered up and that the preservation of morality falls on their shoulders, unlike men.
The Muslim Council of Britain recently got praise for holding a conference on combating sexual exploitation in the wake of abuse cases that had involved groups of predominantly Pakistani men. But for one man who's followed the story for 3 years, the MCB and others need to do much more.
For this country to have a decent future, we need to get along together. And if things like attitudes towards the non-Muslim girl, in stark contrast to the obsession with the honour and chastity of the Muslim girl, of your sister, of your daughter, are such that actions that would be unthought of with a Muslim girl become somehow permissible with a white girl, then we were all in trouble.
And to some, attitudes to women are not limited to sexual interaction, but the very structures and life in Muslim communities, and indeed the MCB itself.
You know, I'd like to say to the MCB, what are you doing about the fact that there are mosques in this country that aren't allowing women in? The fact that there are very few mosques in this country that have women's voices and decision-making abilities on the mosque committees? What are you doing about the fact that there are women in this country, Muslim women, who are experiencing female genital mutilation, that they're experiencing forced marriages, honour-based violence? What are you doing about the fact that there are Muslim women who are getting married and whose marriages are not being registered and who are being left homeless, who are being denied inheritance rights and maintenance rights? What are you doing about the fact that there are Sharia councils in this country that have been found to be discriminating against women? What are you doing about the fact that there are young men in this country who continue to hold very misogynistic views about Muslim women, about their role? What are you doing? And it's not just in terms of words or issuing the odd occasional press release. That's not going to solve this problem of deeply patriarchal communities.
That all these issues can be exploited to the point of Islamophobia is undoubted. But many non-Muslims feel unless British Muslim communities do tackle these things openly, a difficult cultural gap will exist between the two.